This week on Quality Digest Live, we chat with Pam Bethune of DECRA certification about the fundamentals of risk management.
That's right. Plus, is after-sales service the key to customer satisfaction? Well, we'll find out when we come back.
This episode of Quality Digest Live is brought to you by Mitutoyo America. Whatever your metrology challenges, Mitutoyo supports you from start to finish.
Well, welcome back one and all to Quality Digest Live for July 14th, 2017. QDL is your weekly look at who and what is making the news in the world of quality. I'm Mike Richmond, publisher of Quality Digest.
And I'm Quality Digest Editor-in-Chief, Dirk Ducharme. In the past, both editorially in our magazine and online, and even on here, we have mentioned how important we think various industry credentials are in terms of advancement in pay. I mean, it isn't universally true, but in general, the more recognized certifications you get, the more eligible you are for promotions or pay increases. So kind of with knowledge comes yes, exactly. So with that in mind, we thought this announcement from NIST is worth bringing to your attention. The National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, through the Hollings Manufacturing Extension Partnership, otherwise known as the MEP, has launched an important study, we think, to determine the value of the credentials used in manufacturing as perceived by those who are responsible for hiring and promotion decisions. In other words, are those people, do they think credentials are valuable?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of credentials out there, but there isn't a lot of independent research regarding their perceived quality, market value, and effectiveness, specifically related to manufacturing industry needs. NIST hopes that this research will provide some useful information to manufacturers, career counselors, credential developers, as well as job seekers. So they have this survey that they want you to take, along with some demographic information which remains confidential. They ask a lot of questions about various types of certificate programs and apprenticeships that might apply to you or some of your employees. Some of these are hard skills related, like let's say a certified welder, and some are more soft skills like Six Sigma black belt. So I read through the survey, and I can tell you that most of the questions do appear to be directed at human resources folks or managers. But I recommend you go out and take a look at it. If it doesn't seem like you can answer the questions, well, we encourage you to pass this survey along to your HR department or your manager. I mean, it's this kind of information that can only help everybody in the end. By the way, if you take the survey, there is a section in there that allows you to request that the survey results be sent to you, so that might be interesting. Underneath our player page, we have a link to the survey. NIST promises that the information you provide will be used in technical reports in aggregate only and will be held in confidence. The survey takes about 15 minutes and must be completed by Friday, June 30th, 2017. So we really recommend that you go out there and at least take a look at it, because I think, particularly if you request that the survey results be sent to you, I think there may be some really useful information that comes out of it.
Yeah, I think that it's always good. Again, we do talk a lot about the value of this, and this is an opportunity for you to help support that,
right.
And answer some questions and provide some data. I mean, the more data we have to prove the value of these types of things, the more it's going to be actually able to be used by those who hire. And if you're credentialed, it's going to help you eventually in your career to be able to get more opportunities.
And by the way, a lot of times credentials cost money.
Sure.
And if you're finding out that certain credentials maybe aren't all that valuable, it's like, well, I guess for my own knowledge it's great, but maybe it's not worth the amount of money I'm putting into it.
Yeah, or maybe you find out it really is.
Or maybe you find out it really is, right, exactly.
Or maybe you're considering one and you find out it really is, let me go ahead and do that.
Yeah.
All right, good job, thanks, Dirk. All right, well, if you look around successful organizations, especially those that produce technological innovations, but also including those that lean heavily on technology and their solutions, the common term you hear is disruption,
right.
Quote unquote disruption, right? Everybody wants to be a disruptive innovator, which essentially just means that you explode the paradigm within your sector with a breakthrough solution of one kind or another. Thus, you disrupt the established norms and you kind of set new ones, and you establish a new paradigm in which yours is the solution of choice, right? I mean, you want to do that. You know, when they say be disruptive is one of those terms that, you know, on the face of it is like a negative. You're disrupting. You're disruptive. Right. I heard that all the time when I was a kid. You're disruptive, Michael.
Yes.
Stop doing that.
I can believe it.
So you don't want to do that. But you do want to be disruptive within your industry, especially if you're in an older, a well-established industry where maybe you could use some shaking up, right? Good advice. Well, that's the topic of Ryan Day's latest op-ed, Reinvention in the Age of Disruption. There it is right there. You can see it. It ran in yesterday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. And it also just happens to be the theme of a book that Ryan talks about within his column titled Reinvention Accelerating Results in the Age of Disruption. It was written by disruptors par excellence, Shane Cragen and Kate Sweetman. Now, the idea behind the book is that disruption has always existed in business, but the scale and the pace of change is a lot bigger and faster today, and it's actually really getting bigger and faster all the time. In chatting with high-level business people across the world, Cragen and Sweetman have reached the conclusion that a major driver of disruption is what they call non-traditional competitors. Actually, what their people, the people that attend their seminars, talk to them about and say are non-traditional competitors. So what would you consider a non-traditional competitor? Well, if you're a cab driver, I think Uber is a perfect example, right, of a non-traditional competitor. It's really an app, if you think about it. It's really all that Uber is.
It's a piece of software.
It's a piece of software. But it crushes the business model of taxi drivers. You know, people that spent a lot of money and sought their medallions after a long period of time. I mean, you know, that's very expensive to get a medallion in the city, in one of these big cities, or at least it has been.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Right. Now they might be
forward
kind of cheap. Yeah.
What it's going to be, right? Or think about Amazon buying Whole Foods and moving into kind of the brick and mortar grocery business. I mean, it's not what Trader Joe's or the neighborhood grocer wanted to see. I think no doubt about that. Even in our little industry, I mean, you think about it, Dirk. I mean, Google. Right? Think about Google. I mean, think about the billions and billions of dollars of ad dollars, right, that are flowing to that lovely little competitor.
We take 1% of that. We take 0.5% of it.
Take a lot less than that. You know, they're a competitor that very few of us in media really would have maybe considered a competitor, even a threat a decade or two ago, right? It's like Google, their search engine. You know, how can they take ad dollars? Well, they can take ad dollars really quickly, believe me. I mean, the point is that things change quickly, and you need to have your feelers out there constantly to get a kind of a sense of your markets and your place within them. Cragen and Sweetman, they have a great analogy they talk about in the book. It really brings it home, and they're going to be actually using this analogy in the forthcoming book titled The Fearless Leader. Ryan talks about this in his article, his column as well. Now, I didn't know about this. I don't know if you knew about this, but apparently here in Northern California, along the coast, not far from Half Moon Bay, is some of the very best surfing in the world. Did you know that?
Oh, Mavericks.
The Mavericks. I did not know this.
Yeah.
The
Once
Mavericks,
a year, maybe, sometimes, not always.
Exactly. This is what I'm going to be getting to. Sometimes, once a year in the winter, swells can reach, I can believe I read this, 60 feet or more. And people actually paddle out and want to surf these.
People have died.
If you don't know what you're doing, you can. And you know, obviously, only the best surfers in the world can even consider surfing in the Mavericks when the swells are that high, right? Now, I mentioned that waves like this only pop up sometimes, but it's almost impossible to tell just when that's going to be just from meteorological conditions alone. So the surfing community has done something really interesting. They've set up buoys 100 miles to the northwest of San Francisco. And when the readings of those swells reach 35 feet or higher, an alert goes out and a bunch of world-class surfing freaks, maybe like you, Dirk, descend. Have you ever surfed?
No.
Well,
no.
These
I don't like to drown.
These freaks, they descend on the Mavericks because they know that the waves are at that level. So do you see the analogy here that Sweetman and Craig were talking about? I mean, what they're saying is you need your own buoys, of whatever kind that may be, to sit out there in the distance, kind of monitoring what's going on with the conditions in your business world and alerting you to those waves that might be crashing down towards you. Of course, if you're of a like mind, those waves might also represent some really unique opportunities to do something really awesome. I mean, effectively disrupting state-old industries, it's just like riding those waves, right? I mean, it's a mix of fear, a mix of exhilaration, but you're not going to get the opportunities to play unless you keep your eyes on the horizon and you're willing to reinvent yourself. Didn't talk as much about the reinvention part of this, but they talk about that in their book a lot too, is this idea that you've got to constantly reinvent yourself. If you want to be a disruptor, you got to disrupt your own established patterns first, kind of scan the horizon for what's happening and try to adapt to what you see.
I like the idea of buoys. I think that was an interesting analogy because you do, I mean, particularly now, things change so fast that if you're not somehow have your sensors out there in industry to detect possible industry-changing technologies that are coming along, if you're not able to detect those early, they are going to catch you really off guard. I mean, and you mentioned that. I mean, the publishing industry was caught majorly off guard by internet advertising. They never saw it coming.
No, we didn't.
They did not see it coming. They got nailed by it.
Yeah, I know.
Us included. Everybody did.
Everybody
It's like,
did.
holy moly! I mean, people are advertising online.
Yeah.
They're paying for that.
Yeah, I still remember the first time I got remarketed too, where I went out to maybe buy a ticket to go to a trade show, and I didn't buy it, and then I was on Yahoo, and I was like, got an ad that popped up or a banner that said, "Hey, do you want to fly to wherever it was, Fort Lauderdale?" And I was like, "Yeah, that's kind of weird." How did you know that? Well, there's this thing called a cookie.
Cookies.
Yeah. So it's you're right. You need to really be aware of what's happening, and then you also need to incorporate it into what you're doing. It's hard, but you need to try to do that.
Yeah. Okay. Next week we will be running an article from Pam Bethune that deals with risk. And there will also be a webinar on this topic. Pam will be joining us in just a moment, but I wanted to give you a taste of what Pam will be discussing because there's a couple paragraphs that I think really, from her article that'll be out next week, that really set this up. She writes, every action or failure to take action by a company naturally has some sort of risk inherent in the process. To survive, a company needs to identify opportunities and take them when beneficial. But the amount of risk must be understood, whether it's determining to pursue new markets and make new investments or discontinuing those pursuits. Risk is built into the nature of any business. If risk is built into the nature of business, then risk analysis and management may be the most important activities a company engages in. With the recent changes to management system standards, the concept of risk management has never been more prominent or had more potential to be misunderstood. That's from Pam Bethune's upcoming article, and also the topic of a webinar that's coming up in a week. We'll have some more information on that. So risk, that is probably the hottest topic in quality circles today. And here to discuss risk with us today is Pam Bethune, Regional Competence Manager of the Automotive Sector for DEKRA. Hi, Pam.
Hi, guys.
How are you?
All right. Well, let's get going into risk. You have said, and you say this in your article, that there are misunderstandings and misconceptions about risk. I think particularly as it relates to ISO 9001. What are some of those misunderstandings and misconceptions about risk?
Well, I see three big ones in what we do. First of all, the idea that it's boundless, that it's somehow we have to worry about whether the moon will fall or an asteroid will hit. And the second one is people looking only at negatives, and I'll go into these in a little more detail in a second. And the third one is trying to use some generic risk management spreadsheet you got from somebody. So let's talk about the first one. And by the way, great lead-in. That book you were just talking about, that talks about risk.
Yep.
The disruptive activities, those are a risk as well as an opportunity. So great lead-in, wonderful. So let's talk about first this open-ended process. I think the problem there is that people look at the statement, you have to understand and manage your risk, without understanding that ISO gives you some boundary statements. So they give you something that will take that huge thing and make it a little smaller, a little more special for just your business. So I think that people need to read that standard very carefully and find those boundary statements. Example, 4.1, all of us auditors, we do this, we quote these numbers, 4.4.1. It says, address the risks and opportunities as determined in accordance with the requirements of 6.1. So then you have to go to 6.1 and look at that. But it's giving you an opportunity to bound it. So you're not looking at a quality system. 4.4.1 is a quality system. You're not looking at just the whole thing, but the risks and opportunities that accord with 6.1. There's another place in the standard where, for management, what they say is the risks and opportunities that can affect conformity of products and services and the ability to enhance customer satisfaction are determined and addressed. So that's a bounding statement. It's telling you your system, your management system is bounded by this. So it gives you an opportunity to take this potentially open-ended, huge monstrosity and make it a little more doable, a little more reasonable for your business. And in fact, in the preamble, if you will, to the standard, it actually says that risk-based thinking will enable an organization to determine the factors that will cause your processes, a bounding statement, and its quality management system, a bounding statement, to deviate from the planned results. So you've got a bounding statement there that says, what we care about is risk-based thinking for your processes, your QMS, in order not to deviate from planned results. Well, you don't want to deviate from them anyway. Another bounding statement, to put in place preventative controls to minimize negative effects. Again, a well-run business is going to do that anyway, but this is a boundary statement for your QMS. And then the last bounding statement in the preamble is to make maximum use of opportunities as they arise. So that basically says be nimble. You know, when somebody puts that buoy out there so that you can see the waves coming up and down, maybe you need a methodology if you're a surf nut to be able to say, I'm out of here, boss. So these are boundary statements, and I think you need to be really aware of all those boundary statements so that you can take this huge thing and make it a little easier to deal with.
Now, Pam.
Now, the second one.
Well, Pam, let's get into it because some of the other questions we have, I think, are going to help you shape this a little bit more, maybe. Because in the article, you write that it isn't just about avoiding risks that need to be avoided, but it's also about understanding and taking the right level of the right risk. So, is the right level of the right risk? I mean, what do you mean by that?
Okay, there you're talking about using those boundary statements. So your organization has objectives, has a context, has a structure, operations, processes, it's got all these things. And if you don't use those boundary statements, you're going to take this huge risk thing and have this monstrous spreadsheet or whatever that's trying to understand risks that are frankly not important to you. You don't need to worry about them. I live in Michigan. We don't have earthquakes. But California does. And so understanding your context can help you keep the risk to the right risk. So if you're in Oklahoma, you better worry about tornadoes, but probably you don't need to worry about those in Minnesota. So understanding all of that stuff you do to bound your risk helps you keep the right risk, and then the right level of the right risk. So going back to natural disasters, you know, there are places in California where you don't worry too much about earthquakes because you're so far away from that zone. So your level of risk is significantly lower. So what if you make a very safety critical product? What if you make brakes that stop things like trains or cars or airplanes? You have a level of risk with that machining that somebody who's machining a light pedestal won't have. So by understanding your risk, using those bounding statements, you can take the right level of risk. So if I'm machining a piece of metal that goes on a brake, it's a very different level of risk than a piece of metal that goes on a light pedestal.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. You know, sometimes when we get in a lot of these discussions, I know that ISO puts out a lot of times guidelines and helps for people, documents to help them understand various topics. And one that I've actually never read, but I've heard reference, is ISO 30001, which I believe is ISO's guide on risk management. Does that document help? I mean, is that worth some? I mean, you have to buy it. I mean, is that worth buying? Is there good, useful information on risk management that people might be able to apply when they're trying to gear up for ISO 9001?
Absolutely, especially if you're a smaller company. There are very large companies that have people whose whole job, they have safety departments whose whole job is knowing this, and they have a very sophisticated analysis of risk. Most companies don't. And so ISO 31000 is principles and guidelines. It's specifically developed to help people understand risk management in far more detail. And it provides principles, general guidelines on how to manage risk, how to analyze risk, and I think it's very valuable. I own a copy. I had to pay for it. I bought it anyway because it was so useful.
All right. Well, we're running out of time here, and we do want to get to the webinar that's coming up. But just really quickly, are there any deadlines worth announcing, repeating, related to ISO 9001 or some of the other QMS standards?
September 2018 is the last time you can transition to the 2015 version of any of the standards, ISO 14000, ISO 9000, all of those. Remember, September 2018. Automotive, it's this year, October 1st. But all the other standard, it's September 2018.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Pam. So if you're interested, as we mentioned here, if you're interested, Pam is very knowledgeable about this. I've been to another of her webinars. As you can tell, she knows a lot about this. She's a very good presenter. If you're interested in learning more about this topic, Quality Digest is hosting a webinar with DECRA and Pam Bethune titled Fundamentals of Risk Management. Not next week, but the week after that on Thursday, July 27th. That's Thursday, July 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. There's a link for it underneath her player page down there. Pam will be presenting, and I'll be your host. So keep your eye on your email inbox for more details on that. Or just click, if you're interested right now, just click on the link underneath the player. It'll take you right out there to the registration form. As usual, it's a free webinar. Pam, thanks a lot for joining us this morning.
Thank you much. Have a good day, gentlemen.
Okay, thanks, and we'll see you at the webinar.
Thanks,
See ya.
Pam.
All right.
Yeah, we
Bye-bye.
did do one with Pam a few months
Yeah, it was.
back.
Yeah,
and
it was
really
really
well attended, well received, and a lot of great information. Pam, as
Yeah.
you can tell from that little interview there, is a really knowledgeable
Yeah,
presenter.
she's a very animated presenter.
Yes,
She's really good.
really
you
interesting.
will definitely be listening.
Her slide deck will be good, so you'll want to
Yep.
check out that one. All right, thanks, Pam. Thanks, Dirk. Okay. Now, one of the great truths in business, I think, is that it's much easier to keep an existing customer than it is to win a new one.
There you go.
That's one that people really overlook a lot. That very formula plays a big part in the article, Upgrade After-Sale Service Technology, Watch Customer Satisfaction Soar by Gary Brooks, who is the Chief Marketing Officer at Synchron. The piece ran in Tuesday's issue of the Quality Digest newsletter. Brooks makes the case in his article that post-sale service is the real differentiator between success and failure for many manufacturers. And if you think about it, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, after all, many consider huge swaths of the manufacturing industry to be essentially commodities. And that puts a lot of pressure on companies to kind of set themselves apart and break out of that race to the bottom that we see in the pricing models of a lot of RFPs. I mean, unfortunately, that's what it comes down to many times is, well, how much is it? Well, yeah, you don't want to have that conversation. You want to be able to talk about other things. So how do you do that? Well, Brooks suggests something that I think everyone in the quality field would certainly support, namely delivering higher levels of value. He recommends post-sale service as the place where you can best leverage that value and win long-term customers. And the best way to do that, Brooks says, is to utilize technology to help you manage and optimize your service quality. Now, should be noted, I think here, fairly, that Brooks company, Synchron, as I mentioned, offers just the type of technological solutions that he recommends
Who would
here.
have thought?
You know, it's amazing how that works. But nevertheless, I mean,
Sure.
that aside, Dirk, nevertheless, the information he offers and the advice he points to makes a lot of sense for anyone in manufacturing who wants to support these kind of after-sales service efforts. Now, there's 3 key suggestions he offers, and they're contained in the article, and I want to just blow through them here pretty quickly, but they're important to note. First one is utilize data management. A central hub of data that's accessible by all key stakeholders allows real-time visibility into processes and rapid elevation of any issues. That's a key one. I mean, certainly everybody can access and look at it, and you can see as a team what's going on and what you may need to look at with regard to service. Another part of this is improve inventory control for parts. A big part of great service is having the right part available at the right time. And robust tracking solutions allow users to keep tabs on what's needed, where and when and how, right? I mean, that's really important, is that if you're in service and somebody's got something that they need, a part, let's say, you've got to be able to find it right away and get it out to them right away. If you can't find it in your warehouse as easily, there's going to be a delay and customers aren't going to be as happy.
Yeah.
We're in an era where people demand stuff
Now.
immediately.
Yeah, when Amazon can get it to you on the next day.
on the next drone within the next hour. I mean, this is the world we're in.
Talk about disruptive.
No doubt. Third of these is manage part pricing. Closely in line with the second point is this one. Now, appropriate pricing can mean the difference between customers retained and customers lost. Again, we're in a world where you can find the right price if you look hard enough online. You don't have to look that hard, really. So your pricing's got to be really nailed down. Now, data-driven insights, as Brooks mentioned, allow for better pricing based on market conditions. So the bottom line here is it's hard to get customers back, as I mentioned, once you lost them, and there's no reason to lose them due to poor service or poor fulfillment when solutions are out there to help you be as efficient as humanly possible. I mean, the idea is that you want to do everything you can to retain those customers. And if you can do that, by using technology, why not do it? I mean, the solutions he suggests are pretty basic solutions. We've talked about them a lot in the past, but it bears repeating. You've got to be able to satisfy your customer demands. The customer is in the driver's seat right now in any industry. Especially in manufacturing. I say don't be a commodity. Don't have that race to the bottom. Separate yourself out, differentiate yourself a little bit with better service.
And it's funny how this actually kind of ties back into that Mavericks article is, I think and I think you've seen people do this more and more, and it's easier and easier to do, is you got to have your buoys out there. So you got to see, what are my competitors doing in terms of service? Are they doing aftermarket service? And what is it? Can I improve on it? Can I be faster at it? Can I be broader at it? How do I take on my competitors? Like you said, if my product is a commodity, then I've got to research to see what the aftermarket service, which is a little bit harder to find. I can go online and find their pricing. It's a little bit deeper dive to find out what they're doing in terms of aftermarket service.
And the thing is, I think still, even in this age today, maybe it's a generational thing, maybe the younger generation doesn't feel this way. I do think there's loyalty to the incumbent. I think if you have a customer and you can service them properly, they're going to want to default to staying with you. So if you have them, we do that here, do everything you can to service your customer properly, and you're going to succeed better by doing that, I think, no doubt. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right, we got a few minutes, Dirk, so I want to get to our off script here. I unfortunately have a rather lengthy setup for you on this one.
Then I won't have time to answer.
There you go.
Awesome.
Hey, all right, that's our show. All right, well, this is going back to your Antikythera mechanism article, which ran last week.
Yes, the ancient clock.
It's nearing 2,000 reads. Last I checked, I don't know, maybe it's over 2,000 reads. I haven't looked at it in a couple of days.
Yeah, close.
But it's close. So good work on that one, man. You got a lot of reads. That's one of our highest read articles the last couple of months. So you took your op-ed into some interesting places regarding the relative value of abstract versus concrete thinking. And that was really the basis of the article. The Antikythera mechanism was just the jumping off point for that. But read it to learn more. I don't want to get into it too much here. And it was there that you got some really interesting reader comment, this abstract thought versus concrete thought. And I wanted to read a couple of these to you. You responded to them a little bit already, but I want maybe you to expand on it a little bit, because there were two that I thought were really, really interesting that I want to specifically call out. And we're going to put them on the slide too, because they're a little bit lengthy. The first one is from a reader named, or his handle is LFM. You probably remember that one. He wrote a rather lengthy comment, very, very well-written comment
really good.
About this. And it ended with this. The STEM initiative is so important for the 21st century, but I fear for its dilution when arts get involved as a substitute. I think the STEAM movement is anathema to science and technology. Of course, the A there is arts. Arts. I disagree that scientists and artists are more alike than different, as a Scientific American article of some years ago posits. Artists tag along and may make meaningful the advances to science of the common person, but they work with emotions and the common human experience. Neither of these is the coin of the realm for science and technology. In other words, no amount of expertise in Shakespeare could prepare one to construct the Brooklyn Bridge, but enjoying the theater was probably a nice part of Washington Roebling's life. Chance does not favor the mind prepared with Milton, Chaucer, and Dickinson insofar as technological advance is desired. And the second one, which counters that and is a lot shorter, is from our old friend Al Metzel of Northrop Grumman. We're going to see him next week at CMSA, and he chimed in, which is cause and which is effect? Is art the catalyst or the byproduct in the process? So LFM raises a good point. We need STEM and maybe STEAM, which I hadn't heard from before. Maybe that's a distraction, but Al's cause and effect thing is a good question too. So which is it? Do they reflect on each other, or do they counterbalance?
Go back to the Brooklyn Bridge.
Okay.
You've seen the Brooklyn Bridge.
Sure have, yeah.
Pretty bridge?
Yeah, beautiful bridge.
Is that art?
It is art.
There you go.
It's art, and it also was in the 1870s and 1880s the very, very bleeding edge of technological advancement.
Now, I would say that actually addresses part of Alan's statement is, in this case, the Brooklyn Bridge, I think, was, you could say that the art of it was a byproduct of the art of it, the beauty of it was a byproduct of the design. But you could also, without having talked to the inventors, how did they come up with that design? Now, I don't know. Does the beauty of the Brooklyn Bridge, is part of that integrated into the actual structural strength of it? And I don't know.
It was.
Oh, okay.
I just read the book on it.
So I get back to, this is why I disagree with LFM, is I believe they work together. And you don't have it on here, but Alan actually had another comment, which it was something along the lines is that the science may come up with the idea, but it's the art that oh God, how did he put it? God, I wish it was up there. The art made it possible, or something.
It was the artistic insight allowed the vision to then be fulfilled through the engineering or something like that.
That was my premise. Alan kind of turned it on its ear a little bit, but the idea that it's still kind of the same idea is you can design it, and you can have all the math behind it and the engineering behind it and all that, but without this vision, which is kind of an artsy thing. Without this vision, you're not going to build it, or something along those lines. I'm sorry.
Well,
maybe Christopher can drag up that
the quote from Alan.
The quote from Alan there. But
meanwhile, but I mean, I think that there it does go hand in hand here, in my opinion, because there's a harmony to mathematics, as we know. I mean, there's the golden mean. There's all these various structural things that. The harmony of that is beautiful to the human mind, the human brain, and the eyesight. You see it, and it feels like it's structurally sound. So, because it is structurally sound, it's beautiful. And because it is beautiful, it's structurally sound. Right. I mean, so that's what I think you're saying with the Brooklyn Bridge. There is that they do go together. By redirect, my additional question to you about this was, okay, well, taking that then to the realm of the work experience for those of us who are in manufacturing, or those of you in manufacturing. How do people who have that more artistic bent and those that are more in the engineering side, how do they come together and work together? Is there a conflict? Is that a good conflict? Or do they just find that they can come together on projects and add their own special skills to it?
I don't know, but I mean, here's a thought I have. We finished in the Bay Area here. We had the old Oakland Bridge, which sustained some damage during the Loma Prieta, not the Loma, the earthquake we had back in, what was it, 98?
89?
89, right.
Yeah.
So they built a new Oakland Bridge. It's a beautiful looking bridge.
Yes.
Now they could have built the same exact type of bridge, a couple pillars that stick up, road runs in between it, ugly. But they made this beautiful sweeping kind of thing. Why'd they do that? They didn't have to do it that way, but somebody thought, maybe a bridge should look nice. So somewhere along the lines, somebody said, can we make this bridge be pretty? And they, somewhere the designer and the bridge builders got together and said, okay, well, we can use this design. Here's the engineering expertise that would have to go into making it real. And I think that was one of the things that Alan was getting to is like, yeah, you can have just a piece of steel that crosses the water, ugly, or you can have some inventiveness to it, some artistic input into it, and create this ugly, turn this ugly concept into a beautiful concept where you get this beautiful bridge crossing or the Golden Gate Bridge. Yeah. It looks beautiful, it's elegant, right? Well, where does that come from? Well, it comes from an artistic perspective, melding with the engineering.
Well, you go to the Brooklyn Bridge. I just read the McCullough book about the building of the Brooklyn Bridge with John Roebling, the designer who died early on, and Washington Roebling, his son, who finished it, despite having a terrible case of the bends. But I mean, there was a lot of artistic ideas that went into the Gothic structures of those arches and things.
Right, sure.
It was very much an eye towards not only the functionality of it, where they sunk these caissons so deep and built it, but also built it with an idea that it would be beautiful and harmonious and all that stuff. So
So I will say, I don't think you can have one without the other.
Right.
I shouldn't say that. You probably can have one without the other, but it's not inspiring.
So Ella, is that the one? Okay. As to the arts the arts may not prepare one to build the next great edifice, they will inspire that edifice.
There we go.
That's what Alan
that's what I was
said.
saying. Yeah.
Thank you, Christopher,
Yeah.
for reading that up. So the bottom line takeaway here is that you do believe in STEAM. You do believe that STEAM is better than STEM, and that a focus on STEM exclusively won't get you as far, maybe, as STEAM.
Exactly. That's my belief.
Okay.
Yeah,
I think
my
it's-
belief. But read LFM's comment in there.
Very-
It's lengthy, but it is really good.
very well
And
written.
actually, he does make some good points in there.
He does.
Yeah.
Great. Good job, Dirk. Thank you, man. All right, well, that's our show for this week. But before we go, we want to thank our sponsor. Mitutoyo Corporation is the world's largest provider of measurement and inspection solutions, offering the most complete selection of machines, sensors, systems, and services with a line encompassing CMMs, vision, form, and finish measuring machines, as well as precision tools and instruments, and metrology data management software. Mitutoyo's nationwide network of metrology centers and support operations provides application calibration, service repair, and educational programs to ensure that their more than 6,000 metrology products will deliver measurement solutions for their customers. For more information, visit mitutoyo.com or click on the banner just below or just to the right of this video player screen.
There we go. Well, that is today's show. Thanks to Pam Bethune of DECRA for joining us on the show. And don't forget about the webinar that we're doing with them, Fundamentals of Risk Management. Pam will be presenting and I'm hosting. And the event is on Thursday, July 27th at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. Next week, special show.
We got a special show. We're going to be at CMSC in Utah, the Cliff Lodge in near Park City, Utah for CMSC, and we're going to be bringing you a show from there. So look out for that next Friday. Some really good interviews we're planning, some good technical demos, and just some good content from the show, all about 3D portable coordinate metrology. So check that out. We'll be at you next Friday with that. You guys all have a great week, great weekend. We'll see you then.
So long.
Bye.